All right, Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and salutations to you, sincere and hopeful elect Akim that push the word of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, in spirit and in truth. To the Ma'ah, our Rabbi, Allah, that is to say 144,000 in the Lashawan Kodash, which is what we are striving to be a part of. All right. Ma'a Arabah a lot. La being two. All right. Two Ma'a Arabah a lot. 244,000. All right. The 144,000. Shalom to you all. All right. So I'm going to start with this scripture here. Sirach 1:29. It says, "Be not an hypocrite in the sight of men, and take good heed what thou speakest." Okay, so we know that this here in Sirach um, were sage words written to Israelites and how to, pretty much conduct yourself as a Hebrew Israelite. All right, more importantly, as a man of the Lord. But these principles, apply, um, just in general. Even say, for instance, you have a lot of heathen that know about the Apocrypha. Now the actual heathen will not receive salvation. Yet, if a bugged out Christian picked up the Apocrypha and read Sirach and applied certain of the principles, certain of these, basic, basic, lessons to their life, it would help out. Okay, so I read that because I'm gonna get this national security strategy um that was released last week to show how hypocritical that document is. All right, the whole document is just a bunch of lies, man. Okay, so once again, Sirach 1:29, "Be not an hypocrite in the sight of men, and take good heed what thou speakest." All right, and the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is he doesn't take heed of what he speaks, and he is a hypocrite in the sight of men, in the sight of all these nations. All right, they look at America as a hypocrite. All right, they look at the president as a hypocrite. All right, so this is the national security strategy, all right, of the United States of America, November 2025. All right, and this was released about a week ago. So I'm gonna jump down to page 11. All right, and this is a pretty good read if you want to, just read about, just read all, just when you read it, you're gonna be like, this shit is cap. It's all cap. All right, it's a bunch of lies. All right, now here on page 11, where it says number 2 priorities. All right, it says the era of mass migration is over. Okay, the era of mass migration is over. Now he's referring to all the so-called illegals that the Biden administration admitted into America. Over those 4 years, Biden just allowed anybody to migrate to America, and the main people that was coming to America were Latin tribes, all right, Israelites from Central and South America, as well as a bunch of uh, people from East Asia, Southeast Asia, okay, from the Middle East, Arabs, Africans, all right, the melanated people of the world all migrated here to America. So that is the migration that the Trump administration says is over. All right. So it says, who a country admits into its borders and what number and from where will inevitably define the future of that nation. Okay, so um, pretty much he's saying that if these dark races of people are continued to come to America, all right, the color of this nation is going to be drastically changed. It's no longer going to be uh, considered a white nation, an Edomite nation. Okay, it says any country that considers itself sovereign has the right and duty to define its future. Now, one point when we read this, the brothers we had read this a couple of days ago in class, and one thing that came to mind when I read this sentence here, where it says any country that considers itself sovereign has the right and duty to define its future. Venezuela popped in mind. Okay, Venezuela is defining its future as free of American oil companies hijacking their oil, stealing their oil. That's the future that it sees for itself, being that it's a sovereign country. But what do you have America doing? Trying to impose its will on Venezuela via intimidation tactics, such as sending naval vessels off the shores of Venezuela, blowing up fishermen, in the cover of night. Okay. So you can clearly see that America is just filled with hypocrisy. All right. This administration is filled with hypocrisy. You got Venezuela trying to do their own thing, being a sovereign nation, but you are trying to disrupt that. But yet, in your national security strategy, you want to cry about, any country that considers itself sovereign has the right and duty to define its future. Okay, just straight hypocritical, man. It says throughout history, sovereign nations prohibited uncontrolled migration and granted citizenship only rarely to foreigners. Okay, so he's saying throughout history, sovereign nations prohibited uncontrolled migration, which that would have to include America. Okay, it says only rarely to foreigners who also had to meet demanding criteria. So what was the demanding criteria that all the Edomites from Europe had to meet when they came over here to America in the late 1800s and the early 1900s? Did they have to meet demanding criteria? Think about it, man. All right. It says the West's experience over the past decades vindicates this enduring wisdom. In countries throughout the world, mass migration has strained economic resources, increased violence and other crime, weakened social cohesion, distorted labor markets, and undermined national security. This era of mass migration must end. Border security is a primary element of national security. We must protect our country from invasion, not just from unchecked migration, but from cross border threats such as terrorism, drugs, espionage, and human trafficking. But the American government, the U.S. government, is heavily involved in all of those. All of those terrorism. All right, they fund terrorists, Taliban, Al Qaeda, ISIS, all funded by the CIA. All right, to cause um, some of these things that was mentioned. Excuse me. Early in this earlier in this paragraph, it mentioned that in countries throughout the world, mass migration has strained economic resources, increased violence, all right, and other crime. weaken social cohesion, distorted labor markets, and undermine national security. So he's claiming that that's what migration does. Yet, by them funding, by the CIA funding these so-called terrorist groups, all right, some of those things is what's happening, to these countries in which these terrorist groups set up shop and pretty much do Satan's will. All right, they weaken that economy, they destabilize that nation. But America is claiming that they want to fight against that, but they're the causes of that. All right, hypocrites, man. It says a border controlled by the will of the American people, as implemented by the government, is fundamental to the survival of the United States as a sovereign republic. Meaning, we gotta close the borders. In short, we gotta close the borders, boot out, all right, via what they're doing with ICE. All right, we gotta boot out all the brown people, so that way this country can remain predominantly Edomite country. Okay, make America great again. Okay, so let me grab a precept, and this is Job 20 and verse 4. It says, "Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed on earth upon earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach unto the clouds, yet shall he perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, Where is he? He shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him." Okay, so eventually Esau is going to be completely eradicated out of the earth. First, they must, their kingdoms, all right, or their kingdom, all right, spearheaded by America. But you got certain Edomite countries that are in positions of power. Europe, them European countries, Russia, Australia, so on and so forth, Canada. All those kingdoms got to be pulled down. And, the Edomites that survive the day of the Lord is going to be carted off into captivity. All right, going to be put into a prison. Okay, they're going to be put into the pits to day one of a 1,000 years of slavery. All right, and when that slavery is fulfilled after that 1,000 years, according to the scriptures, according to Obadiah, they're going to be completely eradicated out of the earth. So let me read this in NLT, Job 20 and 4. It says, "Don't you realize that from the beginning of time, ever since people were first placed on the earth, the triumph of the wicked has been short-lived, and the joy of the godless has been only temporary." So the joy that these Edomites are fabricating, because Esau is not feeling sincere joy as they once did. When they had Jacobin slavery, Jim Crow era, the 60s, the Beach Boys, even in the 90s, you had your Hollywood stars riding around in Ferraris and just sniffing coke and banging the pancake booty, blonde hair, Edomite, beach babes and all that. Them days is over, man. Okay, so this godless demon known as Esau, is he's got a synthetic joy. Okay, and it's temporary. It says, through the pride, though the pride of the godless reach to the heavens, and their heads touch the clouds, yet they will vanish forever, thrown away like their own dung. Those who knew them will ask, where are they? Okay. All right. So just hey, imagine from the standpoint of the heathen, right, in the kingdom. You know, the heathen in the kingdom after 1,000 years and day one of no Edomites being on the planet Earth because they, yesterday they got all exterminated. That's gonna be from the heathen perspective a little like, dang, no Edomites. Where the Edomites at? Oh yeah, they all got burnt up. They all got eviscerated. All right, verse 8 it says, "They will fade like a dream and not be found. They will vanish like a vision in the night. Those who once saw them will see them no more. Their families will never see them again." All right. So, like I said, man, day 1001, you know, uh, uh, day 1002, of the kingdom of heaven, Esau's gonna be out of there. So, from like I said, from the perspective of the heathen, it's like, damn, just hours ago, we seen Edomites. There's all uh, uh, downtrodden and just like people on death row. You got somebody on death row, man, 24 hours before they get electrocuted. They ain't in no uh, uh, jovial spirit. They over there thinking about life and what's gonna happen when they die and all kind of shit, man. Okay, so that every Edomite's gonna be in that situation. All right, and rightfully so, because they're demons. Verse 10 it says their children will beg from the poor, for they must give back their stolen goods. All right. So I got another preset, but first, what I want to do is grab some information from Deep Sea. All right. So, being that this demon Donald Trump is talking about, um, pretty much, getting rid of brown people, and let me go back to this article or this national security strategy, right? So it says, throughout history, sovereign nations prohibited uncontrolled migration. All right, this is where I'm reading from, and granted citizenship only to foreigners who also had to meet demanding criteria. All right, so let's read about this demanding criteria that because once again he mentioned that um throughout history, all right, sovereign nations did this. So let's read about this demanding, which that means America is included in this. All right. So let's read about what demanding criteria Esau had to have coming to America in the late and early 1900s, late 1800s, in early 1900s. All right. So what I said was, I asked the chat. I said, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, what was the majority race of people that migrated to America? Which we already know the answer to that. All right, so it says during the late 1800s and early 1900s, roughly 1880 through 1920, the majority of immigrants to the United States were white Europeans, but there was a significant shift in their regions of origin compared to earlier waves. Okay, so white Europeans were the main immigrants that came to America in this time period. All right. It says key details. It says shift from old to new immigration. Before the 1800s, most immigrants came from Northern and Western Europe, like Great Britain, Ireland, Germany, Scandinavia. Okay. From the 1880s until the Immigration Act of 1920 restricted entry, the majority came from southern, eastern, and central Europe, including Italy, especially southern Italy, Austria, Hungary, including Poles, Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians, Russia, including many rats, okay, fleeing persecution, all right, because you did have rats, small rats, tiny tops in Russia, or you still do, but just like anywhere they go, they they pollute, what's around them, all right. So they got booted up out of Russia and brought their ass to America, okay. Greece, the Balkans, all right. Numbers. It says between 1880 and 1920, more than 20 million immigrants arrived. The majority from the regions above. For example, between 1900 and 1910 alone, about 6 million Italians and 4 million people from the Austro-Hungarian Empire arrived. All right, all crackers. Okay, non-European migration also occurred, but in smaller numbers relative to European immigration. Asian immigration, Chinese, Japanese, Filipinos were significant on the West Coast, but was heavily restricted by laws like the Chinese Exclusive Act 1882. Mexican migration increased after the 1910 Mexican Revolution, but large-scale movement from Latin America grew more substantially later in the 20th century. Some immigrants came from Canada, French and English Canadians, and the Caribbean. It says, while they came, it says, push factors included poverty, political unrest, religious persecution, especially for blase. Damn gutter rats, man. Always got to throw them gutter rats in there. All right. It says, and limited economic opportunities. Pull factors included industrial jobs in U.S. cities, farmland availability, and and perceptions of America as a land of opportunity. It says in the end of the wave. This era of mass European immigration largely ended with the Emergency Quota Act of 1921 and the Immigration Act of 1924, which established nationality quotas favoring Northern and Western Europeans. So look, it tells you that even with these acts, such as the Immigration Act of 1924 and the Emergency Quota Act of 1921, they favored Northern and Western Europeans. All right. It says, so while the majority were white Europeans, the specific origins changed dramatically to predominantly Southern, Eastern, and Central Europe during this period. Okay. So the immigrants that came to America, all right, early on, were all, for the most part, Edomites. Okay, a bunch of Edomites that didn't have to go through some what's the word, the verbiage, the fucking verbal diarrhea used. They didn't have to go through or meet demanding criteria. Okay, they didn't have to go through that. All right, but if you are a brown person, you got to go through that. Okay, straight hypocrites, man. Now, so I asked the chat. I said, what was the Emergency Quota Act of 1921? All right, so it says the Emergency Quota Act of 1921, also known as the Johnson Quota Act, was the first U.S. law to set numerical limits on immigration based on nationality, marking a major shift in American policy from an open door to a closed door. The law's key mechanism. The act introduced a quota system to control immigration. Its most important mechanism was quota formula. It limited the annual number of immigrants from any country to 3% of the number of people from that country already living in the United States, according to the 1910 census. The law established a total annual immigration limit of approximately 358,000 people. Its primary purpose and immediate impact. It says purpose. The law was a direct response to a large influx of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe in the decades before 1920. Its central purpose was to drastically reduce immigration from these regions while favoring immigrants from Northern and Western Europe. So, this, despite this act going into, being coming into law, it still favored Edomites. All right, so we don't want this type of Edomite here in America. We're gonna cut back on allowing these type of Edomites to come here. Now we want to let your brothers come here. Okay. It says this goal was driven by post World War I economic fears, anti-immigrant nativist sediment, and the popularity of now discredited eugenics theories. It says impact. The law achieved its goal. Immigration numbers dropped sharply from 805,228 immigrants in 1920 to 309,556 immigrants in the 1921-1922 period. All right, the number of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe fell to less than half of the annual total. All right. Western Hemisphere. No limits were set on immigration from countries in North, Central, and South America or adjacent islands like Cuba. Asia. It says the law did not apply to Asian countries already barred by the Immigration Act of 1917. So these are just a big racist, man. Now, I'm going to jump down to this next question I asked. It says, what was the Immigration Act of 1924? It says the Immigration Act of 1924, also known as the Johnson-Reed Act, was a major piece of U.S. legislation that made the restrictive immigration system established in 1921 permanent and more severe. It was a direct successor to the Emergency Quota Act of 1921, and is considered a defining and exclusionary movement in American immigration history. So I'm gonna jump down to where it says the national origins formula quota system. The formula is set annual immigration quotas for each country outside the Western Hemisphere at 2% of the number of people from that country already living in the U.S. according to the 1890 census. So just a more dialing down more on the act that was already established all right in 1921. It says international impact, shifting the census base year from 1910 used in 1921 to 1890 was a deliberate strategy. In 1890, the U.S. population had far fewer immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. This meant the new quota heavily favored immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, like Great Britain, Germany, and Scandinavia, and severely restricted those from Italy, Poland, Greece, Russia, and other Southern European nations. Okay, so just taking away a privilege from one Edomite, giving it to the next, man. Okay, so they, according to what we read, despite putting a cap on numbers, all right, there was no other demanding criteria, that these Edomites had to go through to come to America. Okay, So straight hypocrites. America, Babylonians. All right, Donald Trump and his whole cabinet are a bunch of damn hypocrites, man. All right, so let me read. Now, what came to mind after reading all that? All right, um, I thought about those damn Edomite Africana farmers that Trump in February 2025, earlier this year, put on jets and flew here to America. All right, they some straight up illegals that got preferential treatment. All right, some Edomite illegals from South Africa. Okay, down there in South Africa and the land that they was in is not theirs. All right, so they're illegal. They're in South Africa illegally. Those Afrikaners. So they go from one. They go from one piece of land. All right, that they illegally inhabit to another piece of land that they illegally inhabit. All right, so I said, with what criteria did South African farmers, Afrikaners, have to meet when migrating to America under the Trump administration refugee program? All right. So it says, based on official U.S. government sources, the Trump administration created a special. It's special. Why? Because they're Edomites. All right, that's why it's considered a special refugee program for South Africans. It says the criteria are quite specific, focusing on ethnic identity, a demonstrated fear of persecution, and certain demographic requirements. Here are the main criteria an applicant, Afrikaner, or a racial minority must meet. All right, so if you're an Afrikaner, a straight up Edomite, or you're a so-called racial minority, this is the criteria you have to meet. It says core eligibility criteria: nationality and identity. Must be a South African national and identify as either Afrikaner. All right, so you got to be an Edomite or a member of a racial minority in South Africa. Persecution. All right, pretty much you got the South Africans, the actual South Africans. All right, the brown people that was beating their ass and taking back what's theirs. Okay, so where was, you didn't have Esau coming to the rescue of the actual South Africans when they was getting their ass beat, when they was getting their lands took. You didn't have nobody coming to help liberate them and you know uh, get rid of Esau, and showing you that the Edomites don't belong there is the fact that they are getting flown out of South Africa and taken somewhere else. Shows that land ain't theirs, because if that land was truly theirs, they would die on that land defending it. All right, but they're not doing that because that land does not belong to them. Okay, so persecution claim must be able to clearly describe a past personal experience. And Esau is all a bunch of fucking liars. So they're going to be lying, putting 10 on 2. All right, experience or persecution or a well-founded fear of future persecution. All right, a well-founded fear. All right, Esau is delusional, paranoid, and bugged out. Okay, demons playing in their heads. Yeah, I think they're gonna come get me at night. And all kind of crazy shit. All right, it says this must be linked to their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. All right, so let me jump down. Now, one thing I wanted to know more was what do they consider, racial minorities in South Africa? Because in order to receive this help, you got to be an Afrikaner, all right, or a member of a social, of a racial minority. So I was like, let me see what these racial minorities is, because I guarantee it ain't got nothing to do with black people or so-called black people. So I said, list the racial minority groups in South Africa. And it says, based on official and academic definitions used in South Africa, there are three main racial minority groups: colored, mixed race, white, and Indian/Asian. All right. These groups are considered minorities because they collectively make up less than 20% of the population. It says population breakdown. And this is 2024 estimates. It says black South Africans, 81%. Colored, which is mixed. If you're mixed out there, you're considered colored. Now, majority of those so-called mixed are, I wouldn't say majority, but a large portion of those so-called mixed or colored South Africans are tares. Okay? A lot of those half-breeds is tares. All right? 7% white, and then 2.6% Indian/Asian, because you do have a lot of actual dot-head Indians in Moab and just Asians out there in South Africa. All right, so if you are considering any of that, you can apply for the program and come here to America. All right, come right here to America and set up shop. All right, so let me see if there was anything else I want to read out of this. Real quick. Let me see. All right. How to apply. All right. So this is how those Edomite, because they ain't white, those Edomite South Africans, were able to come to America. It says how to apply. It says eligible individuals must initiate the process by completing an online U.S. Refugee Administration Program intake questionnaire on the official U.S. Embassy website for South Africa. It says the process is free and it's important. It says, and it's important to be wary of scams. It says status and quota applicants admitted under this program enter the U.S. as refugees for fiscal year 2026. The Trump administration set an annual worldwide refugees administration ceiling at 7,500, with the majority of these slots allocated to this specific South African program. So there's a certain number of spots available for refugees, but majority of them is for Edomites. All right, so tell me that ain't racist, man. Okay. It says a group of 59 white, all right, let's call them what they are, a group of 59 Edomite South Africans were reportedly the first arrivals under this policy in May 2025. What happens after arrival? Refugees are eligible for resettlement assistance, free money, and can legally work in the U.S. after 1 year. So come May next year, they can legally work in the U.S. They got jobs lined up. Okay. It says they must apply for a green card, lawful permanent resident status to stay permanently. All right, so they just got they got the red carpet laid out for them because they Edomites, man. All right, so straight hypocrite, man. Esau is a hypocrite. So let's read to drill the point in, man. All right. Throughout history, sovereign nations prohibited uncontrolled migration and granted citizenship only rarely to foreigners who also had to meet demanding criteria. Cap. Lies, 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 lies. All right. The West's experience over the past decades vindicates this enduring wisdom. A bunch of lies, man. A bunch of lies, man. Now let me grab the rest of these precepts. This is Job 27 and verse 8. It says, "For what is the hope of the hypocrite, though he hath gained, when the Most High taketh away his soul?" All right. Will the Most High hear his cry when trouble cometh upon him? Okay. Will he delight himself in the Almighty? Will he always call upon the Most High? Okay. The wicked ain't about to be calling upon the Heavenly Father. They ain't about to hope, in Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Okay. So the Most High is getting ready to take away, America's soul, man, by way of thermonuclear destruction. And partly the reason for that being that this place is just a hypocritical ass fucking kingdom, man. All right, the address that Trump gave the nation earlier this week, I want to say Wednesday, Thursday, everything he said was a damn lie, just lying through his damn teeth, and expecting people to be so dumb that they don't know that everything he's saying is a damn lie, man. Okay, so the Lord, despite everything that America has gained, they about to lose it all. Babylon the Great is about to lose everything. All right, these Edomites here in America about to lose everything. All right, by way of the economy tanking, and then ultimately all of it being burnt, going back to an elemental stage. Okay, by way of thermonuclear destruction. And it's 10:10 right now. Brakatah Bashim Yashah Bashim Rakakadash. All right, so I'm going to end off with Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. It says, "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith." All right, so the hope for elect, we live by faith. But Esau's soul, he doesn't have an upright soul, and Donald Trump is the poster child of that. All right, Nero 47, all right, is the poster child of the Edomite, which they all have, spiritual scoliosis. Okay. It says, "Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he's a proud man, neither keepeth at home." All right, you see what he's doing? Sending ships over to Venezuela. Okay, just going around bugging everybody. All right, just fucking with everybody. All right, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. So at some point in time, he allowed, America allowed, Babylon the Great has allowed, people from all walks of life to come here to America, just heaping people unto himself. All right, but now it's a problem when certain people is trying to come here, and you don't want them here. All right, but you have promoted yourself as a land of opportunity for so long, but now you mad that, certain people want to come here and actually participate in, the opportunity. Okay? Hypocritical fucking race of people, man. All right, the Edomites. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. All right. And that word clay, as we always go into in the Hebrew, is abatyat, which is debt. All right. This place, Babylon, has 37, close to $38 trillion worth of debt in counting. All right. According to the national debt clock, every citizen in America is in debt. All right. When you're born into debt. You got a couple $1,000s worth of debt as soon as you're born. Okay. That's hell, man. All right. So all these nations is got words for America. Ultimately a destruction to him that increases that which is not his. You taking things that don't belong to you. You trying to take Taiwan from China. All right, Taiwan is part of China. Okay, but America is pumping their heads up with the notion of no, y'all your own sovereign country, man. Y'all don't belong to China. We'll be here to help you. No, man. Okay, taking oil, attempting to take the oil from the Venezuelans. All right, just two examples of Gaza. All right, Trump Gaza, trying to blow those Palestinians to hell, so that way you can take Gaza and turn it into a resort. All right, fucking resort, man. Okay, increasing that which don't belong to you, man. And by way of doing that, you are in heavy debt. Okay. That amongst other things has caused America to be in this crazy ass debt. Printing all these Federal Reserve notes that's not backed by anything. Okay. It says, verse 7, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them? Okay. Verse 7 in NLT, it says, suddenly your debtors will take action. They will turn on you and take all you have while you stand trembling and helpless. And that's, man, with BRICS up and running, and all these nations trying to enter into the BRICS system, all right, to be able to make payments, national payments, global payments, without having to rely on America, using American systems, that is forcing all those Federal Reserve notes to float back to America. And now all that debt, all right, just rests here in Babylon. All right. You don't have foreign countries, taking up that debt. All right. All that debt is going to float right back here to America. All right. And that's going to cause America to be trembling and helpless. That's going to assist in that. Okay. Verse 8, it says, because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood and for violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. Because America has done nothing but promoted bloodshed, violence, death. All right, starting all these wars. Just man, going to Iraq. All right, the millions of people that died there, or however many, I'm not sure. I don't want to put a number on it, but I can say hundreds of thousands of people that have died in Iraq. Okay, people in Afghanistan. Or you just minding your business, and then one day you got Americans just dropping bombs and then before you know it, you're being occupied by the devil. Your land's being occupied by the devil for no reason. Which, man. All right, so um, the nations is gonna spoil you. That's why you have the Russians and the Chinese, all right, coming to uh some degree coming to aid Venezuela, all right, by sending them, missile systems, okay, naval vessels, submarines, off the coast of Venezuela in reaction to what America is doing. Okay, verse 9, it says, "Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness, and to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil." All right, so using Venezuela for an example, they trying to take that oil. Okay, they're trying to take that oil from Venezuela. Okay, to assist, this economy, this country. All right, covetousness, that's evil. What the them coveting that Venezuelan oil is evil. That don't even belong to you. Trump gonna say that that's American oil and they want it back. They stole it from us. How the hell did the Venezuelans steal oil that is found via them digging in their land? There's a whole damn Gulf of Mexico that separates, and Caribbean, sea, that separates America from Venezuela. A whole body of water that separates those two uh, uh, continents, those two countries. But this damn delusional president, all right, Nero Caesar, got the nerves to say that they stole the oil, man. That's crazy. Crazy, man. All right, that's dangerous, man. Verse 10, it says, "Thou hast consulted shame to thy house by cutting off many people, and hast sinned against thy soul. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it." All right, the economic structure here in America is crap. All right, potholes everywhere. Buildings got asbestos and you know shit falling through. Okay, this is America is becoming a third world country. All right. Verse 12, "Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and establisheth a city by iniquity." And that's how the foundation of America was laid. It was laid through the bloodshed of the Native American and Seminole Indians. All right. They had to be killed off in mass numbers. All right. And that blood was the blood was it was built on top. Built the foundation of what we know America to be today was built upon the blood shed of those natives. Or a lot of um buildings and towns and whatnot, schools and hospitals. If you were to um demolish those buildings, or and do some excavation, you'll find literal bones of Native Americans, man, just buried right there. Okay, so the Lord has not forgot about that, man, and this place has to pay for that. Verse 13, it says, "Behold, is it not of the Lord Yahweh of hosts that the people shall labor in the very fire, and the people shall weary themselves for very vanity?" All right. In the NLT, it says, "Has not the Lord Yahweh of heaven's armies promised that the wealth of nations will turn to ashes? They work so hard, but all in vain." All right. So trying to make America great again in this new golden age of Babylon. Hey man, on your birthday, uh, I pray the ops uh, uh shoot the block up on your birthday. All right. That's what niggas be doing niggas in the world to do that shit. But being that 2026 is gonna be the 250th birthday of Babylon the Great, I pray that that's the year this place gets smoked with thermonuclear fire, man. You already got, nuclear Russian nuclear subs, uh, you know, off the coast of Venezuela. So America is surrounded. All right. Um. Yeah, I pray next year is that year, man. Abaratazah. But we know there's prophecies that got to come to pass, such as the mark of the beast, World War III, so on and so forth. Verse 14, it says, "For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of Yahweh as the waters cover the sea." And in the kingdom, that's going to be so. All right, everybody's going to know Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. It says, "Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that putteth thy bottle to him, and maketh him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness." And that's what Esau did, by way of democracy and what have you, through the course of America's history. It's giving that democracy to all these nations, and that democracy bugged these people out, bugged the nations out. All right, to where you got LGBT, XYZ bug outs all the world over. Okay, you got coups being set up, and these people, these nations fashioning their government systems after America, and it just doesn't work. Okay, so now all these nations is bugged out just like Esau. Okay, verse 16, it says, "Thou art filled with shame for glory." So America's glory is now shameful. All right, "Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of Yahweh's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory." Okay, so shame. And ultimately, when the missiles hit this place, that's going to be the ultimate shame. Because, man, think about it. All these people here in America that's going to be left here to go up in flames. Another nation looking at that is going to be like, that's a shame. Like, shit. The whole country is done, up in smoke. All right, up in flames. That's something that you gotta wrap your mind around, man. Soon this whole continent, or not continent, excuse me, this whole country of America is gonna be done. It's gonna be burning, man. All right, because of the actions that Esau Edom has played out in the earth, all stemming from this decrepit, hypocritical fucking country, man. So I brought this out. That was edifying. Until next time, shalom.